Hello, this is Kade, and it's day 6 of the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. So we're looking at the ships from the Mimitar. Oh wait, wrong game. Drake. What is it? Drake Intergalactic, Drake Enterprises, I don't even know. Interplanetary, that's how you see. So, yeah, it's Drake. I'm gonna be upfront with my biases. I've never been a fan of the Drake designs. It's purely the design aesthetics, but also the philosophy behind them. That said, they have some good offerings that are really solid ships to play around with. Now here we have the Herald, which is going to be their, I'm really fast data runner. Probably is going to be really useful, could be making some money, of course have the Mercury Star Runner as well with data running. However, the problem right now for this ship is that it doesn't really have any other real use than data running, and that's not really a gameplay mechanic currently in the game. So yeah, for that reason, fairly simply, I cannot really recommend this ship. On the other side, we have the Drake Buccaneer. This is a flying glass cannon. So if you're a good pilot, this ship could be a monster in your hands, because it has quite a lot of firepower, fairly low price, not that heavy in the weight class. Could be a very strong contender, but as I said, it's a glass cannon. You cannot really afford to take hits in this. So if you're going to go into larger battles where there's more ships flying around, this is probably not going to fare as well as a ship that can actually take some hits, like a Hornet, for example, who has more of the hull armor, or a Sabre that has better shields. Of course, the main staple of Drake is going to be their Cutlass series. We have them, of course, right now in 3 different versions. We have the standard black down there in the center. We have the medical in the form of the red, and we have the blue, which is the enforcer / bounty hunter. The Cutlass series has long been a favorite for many, and for all the good reasons. It's a very capable ship. It can handle a fight. It can do cargo transportation. If you got the red one, you don't have the cargo, but you have the medical capacity. So it's really useful if you're doing like bunker missions with some other people, because you just have a mobile respawn point that's easily to fly around the place. And the blue, of course, we're still waiting on some of the gameplay mechanics, but it's also a very strong option. But the basic black is just such a good all-around ship. It's fun to play around with solo, but you can also run it with one of your mates. It's just a ultimate flexible ship, and the prices are, they remain somewhat reasonable. And being Drake ships, probably the maintenance is not going to be insanely high either, and a lot of them should be done by yourself quite easily. Then of course we have the current king of cargo hauling, the Drake Caterpillar. It's an annoying thing to fly. The placement of the cockpit, the length of the ship, it can be quite tricky sometimes if you're not really used to it, but it's unbeaten in regards to cargo capacity. The only downside is that it packs not that much in the form of defenses, it doesn't have really that much strong armor, and it doesn't really strike hard with the shields either. So it's not a ship that you really want to get into combat with. It does have a couple of man turret options, but most of the time when I'm hauling cargo, I'm running alone. And of course, if you're going to be running with people, they want to have a cut of the profits. But yeah, it's a really strong contender for a ship. It continues to do really well in the cargo holding capacity. They did say that there were going to be like modules in here which you could install in some of these cargo bays. We're still waiting for that, but in the meantime, like gameplay wise, cargo holding is one of the best credit makers outside of mining. And this is going to be a really strong ship, and it just continues to be. It's also one of the ships, it's one of the older ones by now, but it just has maintained its position really well. It doesn't really have any major flaws. The only minor issue would probably be the interior layout, which could possibly be improved a little bit. Now let's go downstairs, because there's only one hall today. And here we have the hover bikes. I forgot the name of those things. Yeah, the dragonflies. Problem I think with the dragonfly, it's still relatively bulky. So that could be an issue. And right now the hover bikes aren't really liked all that much by most players. So that could be a concern. But overall, of course, these are going to be relatively useful if you're going to need something like this to get around on the planet's surface. I do wonder, however, if the Ranger might be a better option because it's a little bit more compact. but we'll have to see. You also, of course, got the Nox Q, for example, which is also a hover bike. So there are multiple options around, and to me, like with these hover bikes, it comes down to preference most of the time, because yeah, they have weapons on them, but I don't really see the point of these weapons, as I mentioned before, because they're being fixed, so you need to steer the whole bike. It's like, you better probably off just getting somebody on the back seat with a railgun. Now let's see what they have on the holo displays, because there's still quite a few Drake ships that are outstanding. And we start off with the Corsair, I believe this was. Yeah, it is. So this is going to be Drake's offering that is competing with like the Constellation anyway, so, and probably also now with the Mercury Style Runner. Again, it follows the Drake philosophy. It's, you know, low armored, good amount of guns, has some multiplayer capability, and it has this asymmetric design, which I know some people really enjoy. I'm personally less of a fan of, but hey, that's all up to you. Overall, I think it's going to be a solid option, but we'll have to see how it's going to be when it launches. And of course, let's face it, the Constellation doesn't really offer all that much competition right now. Then we have the Vulture, which is going to be the small salvaging ship. So this is going to be a nice entryway into a salvaging profession. And with this one, you're going to be focusing more on like retrieving the valuable components from my ship. Whereas with the Aegis Reclaimer, that thing will just numb up the entire ship hulls and doesn't really care all that much. So in a proper salvage operation, you probably have vultures going in first to strip out anything that is still functional and is of high value, and then everything else will just be consumed by a reclaimer. Could also be that the reclaimer has some options to do this itself, but we'll have to see. And over here we have, of course, the big boy, the Kraken. The Kraken comes in two variations. We have the Privateer and the Standard Kraken. So the Privateer is going to be the like flying mall, they call it, like it's a flying shopping place. So it has less cargo capacity, but it has like a lot of place to have individual shops on board. And the normal one is having quite a bit of cargo capacity and of course the carrying capacity for all of the fighters on board and all the other stuff that you want. It will follow the same Drake philosophy, so it's going to have relatively low, of course, in the form of defenses. It has quite a decent offensive suite. It does come at a really steep price tag, but unlike the Idris these days, I think this ship has more of a broader role. A ship like the Kraken I could see being very useful in supporting certain industrial operations, like for example mining. If you have prospectors like they actually showed in the original trailer, like yeah, that could be really useful because the prospectors could use the Kraken to refuel and offload their hull, and then they could go back out there again. You could just repeat the cycle, and then the cargo could be probably unloaded from the Kraken onto a transport, or the Kraken itself could just fly back and forth once a while. And it offers, of course, a really powerful defensive spot for your mining fleet. So even if you're running larger mining ships, you'll still probably be running smaller ones as well to just go for those high value items, which I suspect that the larger ships like the Orion will not be as successful with. But of course, like all of these capital ships, they come at a really extreme price tag, and you only really should acquire them if you have an organization that can support them and actually requires them. If you do not, then they're just not going to be used, and it's going to be a real waste of money. Because make no mistake, ships of this caliber will require a substantial amount of running costs to keep them running. Because you're going to need a lot of staff, a lot of fuel, and of course a large ship, a lot of maintenance. So do keep that all in mind. And that covers Drake for us for today. It's the questionable manufacturer, long-standing favorite of pirates, but it's also used by a lot of frontier law enforcement and just by a lot of other people as well, because the ships are relatively inexpensive. But that of course comes down to the fact that they're not as sturdy, to put it simple. So they are more fragile, they run more risks, and they also have not as much in the form of safety features. Like escape pods and ejection seats are not a common sight on Drake ships at all, because they don't really believe in it, and they say like, at cost, just don't die. So that's Drake for you. Short one for today is like, with some of these manufacturers there's not a whole much to talk about. Ones that can be recommended, of course, Cutlass, Caterpillar is really no question about it. Buccaneer could work if you're the pilot that can make it run. Kraken has its uses more so than I think than Idris, but good luck trying to get one. Vulture in the future could be really recommendable for salvage operations. And the Corsair could be a good competition to the Constellation and the Mercury Star Runner. So do keep an eye on that one as well, and just look at the statistics. They will change anyway, but they can help you make your own decisions. Just keep in mind that a Drake ship, as I said, will repeat again, they are not as survivable. So if you're going to get into combat with them, do realize that fact. And with that, I hope this has been useful again. And I thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for day 7 of the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo.